Johnny Fontana, Real World INFJ. I'm back with another video.
Not how pure was their message, how integral it was. Well, boy, he should have given that a little straighter, because he had it, those people would be more likely to vote for him. So you actually have cultures now that are celebrating inauthenticity. Inauthenticity to the degree of, hey, you're really good at faking that.
Today's going to be an interesting one, right? And I think I'm going to hit the core on this video in terms of what I've been saying in my other videos, which I haven't even posted yet. I don't know what I'm waiting for, but hopefully it all makes sense when it all comes out. Hopefully I can hit a nerve, because again, as an INFJ, I'm not going to speak for everyone, right? I see patterns and I see things that start to occur, right? And then from there, you do more research, but you try to substantiate your research by not following people who you think, right, maybe off course, but people who you really think, okay, yeah, like this is the truth. Like we're starting to see certain things, right? And stats and figures and the numbers are starting to come in and say, yes, this is what's happening. And it's becoming a problem.
You said that this is a time for soul searching in social media businesses, and you were part of building the largest one. What soul searching are you doing right now on that?
I feel tremendous guilt. It literally is a point now where I think we have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works. That is truly where we are. And I would encourage all of you, as the future leaders of the world, to really internalize how important this is. If you feed the beast, that beast will destroy you. If you push back on it, we have a chance to control it and rein it in. And it is a point in time where people need to hard break from some of these tools and the things that you rely on.
So, for time now, I've been noticing that there are a lot of INFJ enthusiasts on YouTube and on online who sort of, I wouldn't say are fake, but many may be mistyped, okay? However, aren't providing the appropriate guidance for the time that we're in right now. That's very important. That's the thing. These YouTubers and online posters, they direct their information to the few who are just not involved in real world. Where you have other people who are busy with life who may not be doing these videos like I am. And I'm not looking for a whole lot of views, but they may be not, but some of them, they may need guidance, but they're not receiving it. And that's one of the issues that I have.
So you're dealing with an addicted generation.
This is a big time bomb ticking.
It will get really worse,
right.
Okay? So combine that with the fact, so you have an addicted generation that doesn't have the skill set to ask for help. Combined with the fact that they're so good at Facebook and Instagram, they're good at putting filters on everything. So they're good at showing you how smart and strong they are. These kids who commit suicide, you go look at their Instagrams, you would have no clue that they were depressed because they're happy and they're star athletes. Right? You'd have no clue because they're really good. So when we say silly things like, my door is always open, you're assuming they have the courage to come in.
Because I see that there's a lot of people providing foundation. Like I spoke to, or I commented on Boomchika's video, and for her it's like, oh, I'm laying the foundation. The problem is that it's a little too late now, because everyone is laying down their own foundation. That's the problem. You see what I'm saying to you? Like it comes to a point in time where I say, okay, we have others who are providing guidance, right? But they don't label themselves as INFJ, okay, or MBTI type. They just say, I'm a businessman, I'm, a doctor, I'm real estate, I am into, music, I'm an artist, and I'm going to provide this information and this advice, but there's no label behind it, right? But it's understood. However, and it's often, because I don't speak for any other MBTI type, because I don't follow any MBTI type, because that's not who I relate to. I relate to the INFJ. Whenever you go to their videos or their platforms to seek advice, it's all self-reflect, and it's all laying the foundation, right? But the problem that I have with that now is that when now you question these individuals, not based on their identity, but if you are going to represent a community, right, an INFJ personality type, then it'd be nice if you provide the guidance beyond foundation in order to help in the real world today, because we have a lot of people who are struggling.
You know, imagine like when you take that to the extreme, where, you know, bad actors can now manipulate large swaths of people to do anything you want. It's a really, really bad state of affairs.
You see what I'm saying to you? But as an INFJ, someone who's into social dynamics, understanding human behavior, you already saw that coming. Okay? But there are other people who are preaching, like Simon.
I can't even imagine what the suicide and homicide and just the rates of depression, you know, and accidental deaths due to overdose are going to look like in the future. It's going to reach epidemic proportions. It's already, the statistics are already alarming, and yet nobody's sounding any alarm bells. We've got to intervene as parents. But as companies, we now have to deal with the influx of kids that are coming into our companies with addiction.
And the leadership now is even more important than ever.
And leadership now is even more important.
Yeah.
And the leaders now are even more irresponsible. You are responsible for the lives of human beings, and some of these human beings are your children. So okay, you bastard CEO who thinks all the stuff that I talk about is craziness, and you don't have time to make these changes. This is, I hear, we don't have time. It's a war out there. I've actually heard executives tell me that. It's a war out there. I don't have time for this leadership stuff.
Okay? But he doesn't label himself as an ENFJ, INFJ, or whatever MBTI type is. So the world is going past, right? Things are coming up. We are aware of this, and there are people who are speaking about it. They just don't have that label, but obviously you know who they are. But as an INFJ, the 1%, you would think, okay, well, maybe it's time that we now start taking that label and addressing certain issues as an INFJ, so that those who are that 1% could say, you know what, let's go ahead and proceed and make a change in the world, okay? Again, it's not so, because an INFJ can go to anyone and seek this advice. But what I'm saying to you is that if most people who are into the MBTI, theory, they seek others who are like them.
And we compound the problem, right? We curate our lives around this perceived sense of perfection because we get rewarded in these short-term signals, hearts, likes, thumbs up, and we conflate that with value and we conflate it with truth. And instead what it really is fake, brittle popularity that's short-term and that leaves you even more, and admit it, vacant and empty before you did it. Because then it forces you into this vicious cycle where you're like, what's the next thing I need to do now? Because I need it back. Think about that compounded by 2 billion people. And then think about how people react then to the perceptions of others. It's really bad. It's really, really bad.
But again, it's this dopamine hit, like as that individual said, of seeking self-reflect, seeking, the comments, the likes, and like, oh, I relate to you, and I'm repeating myself because I've said it in my other videos, but I have to constantly repeat myself so it, okay? It's just the art of repetition, so making it stick. So people now go to other people's platforms who are providing this foundation amongst every other platform. See, right now, my videos don't provide foundation because you can get that anywhere else. You can read the book. But according to the book, it says we are counselors, we are protectors, right? But yet, instead of not providing this counsel, we're providing our own reflective foundation. And people come to it and says, oh, I relate to that. I totally see myself in that. You see that all the time in the comments. I totally see that. So where do you go from there now?
The short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created are destroying how society works. No civil discourse, no cooperation, misinformation, mistruth. And it's not an American problem. This is not about Russian ads. This is a global problem. But everybody else has to soul search a little bit more about what you're willing to do, because your behaviors, you don't realize it, but you are being programmed. It was unintentional, but now you got to decide how much you're willing to give up, how much of your intellectual independence. And don't think, oh yeah, not me, I'm fucking genius, I'm at Stanford. You're probably the most likely to fucking fall for it. Because you were fucking checkboxing your whole goddamn life. No offense, guys.
None taken.
I mean, no, I understand there's a place for that. But at what point in time do we now start providing real world commentary and advice like Simon, like other people who provide advice, but without the label? At what point in time do we as a community, because you go to Gary Vaynerchuk's channel.
It's
right.
It's actually what I do for a living is actually only predicated on watching what other people are doing to figure out what they're gonna do next. I could do so many more things to build up my following, but it's not who I am. I know the hacking ways to get more followers, to get more people to know who I am, but I'm a businessman that happens to like understand content a little bit. So I'm never going to be followed by the most, but I'm also, that means not going to sell things I don't believe in. Yeah. So if you follow all the other entrepreneurs on Instagram, they're selling watches and cash on bed and models and bottles and private planes, and I don't sell that because I don't want to get the cheap followers or the cheap engagement.
Most people say he's an ENFJ, okay? But you know he's a businessman. So you go to him for business advice, for entrepreneurial advice, okay? Not for... He's part of that entrepreneurial community, right? So you don't question him, right? But when the concerns come up of whether a person is not, INFJs say, oh, well, it's up for interpretation. It's depending on the book. No, entrepreneurial speaks for itself. It's either you make the numbers or you don't. The numbers reflect, right? But with us, this whole thing, it's like, oh, well, you know, you don't want to step on toes, you want to do that. Listen to my man, David Corgan, for a moment, all right? Let's just listen to what he says. And I should have put this in the beginning. I think I'll put an excerpt of it, okay? And I'll replay it now. Because it's very important, because as a protector, right? It's not about calling people out. Yes, that's part of it as well. But it's not so much that. It's like if you wear the patch, right? If you identify with the patch, you have a responsibility to help people move forward. Not simply just regurgitate MBTI jargon so that others can relate, so that people can now like and comment because they solely relate. But at the same time, you're just in this ever-ending cycle of self-help where you're actually not actually helping each other. You see what I'm saying to you? Listen to Billy real quick.
My father was that way. My family's that way. We're just genetically predisposed to distrust. And so we tend to question. Maybe it's also, you know, some sort of gypsy root in there, but we have an intuitive quality. And so I think, I mean, if there's any message in our family, it's like, you know, you guys kind of don't belong. Why are you so weird? You know what I mean? I mean, it's work
relate to that, right?
To a point. But even that,
but it doesn't stop there.
More so, like, why don't you kind of get along? Even when you kind of join the rock and roll, you know, the rock star club, it's like, why don't you just kind of get along? Like, why are you going to shut your mouth? Like, why you got to say stuff? You know, I kind of get that vibe sometimes, even from other rock stars. It's like, I don't know.
That vibe of why don't you just get along, why don't you just keep quiet? It happens a lot. Whenever I go into the forums, I say, okay, well, I don't understand what's going on here. Are we just regulated to just self-help, right? And no one's actually pushing forward. So when I ask questions like, hey, what is going on? Like, you know, Why is it that everyone else, okay, in other areas can provide certain information that will allow others to now move forward? But for us, whenever we come into these platforms, we're just met with just self-reflect, okay? What are we doing now to actually move forward and progress and actually help the world on a bigger level and understanding the big picture? Oh, go away, we need a place to come to heal, and it fine. But where's the balance, right? But let's continue on though.
Like, I don't want to be a fucking club. I give a shit. You know what I mean? I think there's bigger fish to fry.
Bigger
to use
fish.
an old saying. And when I look at Jimi Hendrix and I look at John Lennon, they never settled.
Never settled.
They never were okay with the version that other people were giving them. In fact, they tend to shirk that off and move on to the other thing quite quickly. I mean, I was even thinking the other day, people forget when John Lennon kind of went into his retirement phase for 5 years in the
All of you
1970s,
musical
he was very
historians.
politically active. He was super politically active. He really stuck his neck out. The FBI started to file on him, if you've seen that movie. You know what I mean? Imagine that today. For a guy as big as he is, the equivalent, what would be the equivalent of a John Lennon level star a few years after the Beatles broke up? Who is that person in our culture? You can fill in the blanks. There's not a lot of people would have the chutzpah to even go there.
Again, not a lot of people would have the hoods to even go there, and you see it in the comment section where it's like, oh well, it's up for interpretation. If you really want to go there, but I'm cool where I'm at.
80% of the world is asleep. They do not process reality beyond what's on the fucking television. They don't want to. They really don't want to. How many times have you sat at a table with somebody and you brought up kind of a more sophisticated argument? Somebody in your family leans back and goes, I don't want to deal with that. Mm-hmm. That's just like, or what am I going to do? What am I going to do about the people over there killing each other? It's not my fucking problem.
Pure apathy.
I think it's pure apathy. It's just like, it's a lack of empowerment. So if you live in your little bubble dream, well, and John Lennon spoke very eloquently about these types of things long before I did. So the other 20% is constantly up against this 80 that goes, I don't fucking care what's on TV tonight. So that's the difficulty, and that will always be the difficulty. So I think it's a great question, but it's a question that in a way can't be answered because everybody has their own opinion. One guy's rebel is my poser. Because if you go too far, they actually can't understand the rebellion because they actually don't understand what the person's rebelling against. The things I've been rebelling against for over 20 years are only now being understood. Which is strange, because I've been rebelling the whole time. So I actually look kind of smart in hindsight because people could see where I started rebelling way earlier than maybe people thought I needed to. It certainly wasn't good for my musical career, but it was good for my heart. That's why I'm still here and able to make music, and able to make music with great musicians, because we get that. And every time we walk into a situation, we have to encounter, in essence, a lesser version of what we're capable of.
Then I challenge you then. Why don't you just give me your patch? Give me that INFJ patch and just put it aside and just go about your life as just a regular person, right? Why do you need to identify with the INFJ patch if you're just going to settle and just take what you see, okay, and don't question, never wonder, okay, how is this benefiting the bigger picture, right?
In essence, a restless soul doesn't take Rome's version of it and say, fine. A restless soul should look and say, this doesn't seem right. And then the real critic comes out, which we can follow because there's an authenticity and integrity in what they're saying.
Authenticity and integrity into what they're saying, and that's what it's all about. That's the key word, authenticity. See, so it's not whether or not you are an INFJ, but are you being authentic to the community? Are you being authentic to the actual people who follow you, who provide you the comment, the subscriptions, and the likes, and the possible, funding? You see what I'm saying to you? Are you now pushing forward beyond just foundation? Because we all have foundation. We all know we are broken. We all know we have, issues. as it pertains to our personality and our character traits. Right? Let's proceed.
To refer back to the young man's question, I mean, that's the point. I'm more interested in the integrity of the message, and if it kills me or it kills the band, I don't give a shit. You know, I want to live, of course. You know, I'd rather retire on an island. But as long as I'm in it, I'm going to report for what I see. And if it means a smaller audience, then that's what it means.
Report for what he sees, and even if it means a smaller audience, then even if it kills him, that's what it is.
A man has to be able to lay his head on his pillow and know he's telling the truth. And I've at least tried to tell some form of the truth in a system that doesn't want truth tellers. Look at the people that get rewarded by the system that exists. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, just ask you one existential rhetorical question. How many truth tellers exist at the highest levels of media in America right now? And how many people, because they're cussing out some other person, that's considered truth? That's not truth. Truth is going after the system and being willing to risk their place in the system to tell the truth about the system. Yes, sir.
Billy,
About the system. You see what I'm saying to you? But again, people will sit here and just be like, oh, well, again, it's all up for interpretation. It really doesn't really matter. You know, like if we don't want to, you know, step on anyone's feet, and if they are with who they say they are, then by all means, yes. But at the end of the day, what's the bigger picture? What is the end result? Right? Like, we see certain things are happening. Like, so for example, we can talk about depression. But who right now, within the INFJ community, okay, and don't just give me one person, because we have a whole lot of YouTubers here, we have a whole lot of posters. Where do you see now within the INFJ? And I'm not, because I know people are going to try to, no, INFJ, because this is an INFJ type. I'm not worried about any other character, personality type. Give me a handful of those who actually speak on current events and issues and actually do or does what these other individuals do at a higher level in order to but also identifies as an INFJ enthusiast and helps those who identify with that person to see and understand the bigger picture, as like someone like Simon or these other people do, right? Or even what's his name, Jordan Peterson, right? Obviously he doesn't have INFJ written all over his videos, so we all follow Jordan Peterson, right? But then it's all that dopamine rush of, oh, I totally relate to what he says. I did. But then he says, get off your ass and do something about it. Stop sitting around. But we don't want to hear that, though. No, we don't want to hear that. Right? Oh, yeah, I know I need to. But I'd rather just go to someone else who's going to tell me exactly how they feel, and I can relate to that individual.
It's weird to me because I've had the experience of actually being rewarded for being different than. But in the past 17, 20 years, I've watched culture reward more and more posers. It's hard in any endeavor, particularly creative, to have a pure state. You know, like, you know, boy found in the woods, but he's got this amazing voice, how would he sing? You know, part of the intellectual construct is how we arrive at ideas. So what you have is a quickly evolving set of things that you could argue has devolved. So, for example, you have creative breakthroughs like a band like Pantera or Nirvana or the Beatles, and everybody goes, oh, I'll do that. And styles that are easily imitatable are more likely to become popular. So the things that are most easily assimilatable, if that's even a word, become part of the structure. So if the audience rewards the lack of ingenuity, well, if you're on the sidelines and you're watching that happen, the path of independence, it's just who am I? I'm an individual. I'm going to have to forge my own path, which Nicole and Jeff and Mike all did long before they met me. It's too hard. It's actually easier just to get in the train and just ride like everybody else. So because this generation and the past couple generations have rewarded that imitation. It's a quickening to where it's like art imitates life, life imitates art, to where you can't separate anymore. And then the journalist can't separate, and the audience doesn't separate. So if you actually stand up and say, I just want to do my music. If you don't like it, get the fuck out, right? People are like, whoa, dude, that's so crazy. What are you doing? This is so weird. Like, can't you just get along?
So that's why it's important that you seek truth, that you tell and you open and you discuss these openly, so that you, because there's a sense of integrity and sense of esprit de corps, right? And for me, growing up, okay, and being exposed, okay, again, it's repetition, being exposed, and you understand how things relate. Being exposed to all these different career fields in my life, like law enforcement, police, federal government, working in DC, you know, all of these things instilled that esprit de corps. Like there's certain things that you have to follow, certain structures, certain parameters, certain level of camaraderie, okay? As a leader, you need to instill a certain level of understanding and direction. There's no, oh, well, it depends. Yeah, there's a lot of that, but it's not built on that. You cannot build foundation on, well, it depends on who. You see what I'm saying to you? So, again, whether these people are INFJ, I don't know, I don't care. Thing is, if you're gonna wear that INFJ patch, then you need to start providing content, okay, beyond foundation, beyond cognitive this and Enneagram that and that, because most people don't give a about that. 95% of the people in this world don't care about that. I'll give you a prime example about myself, because it's funny because I bring in all these topics, right? But I want to have them separated, but I'll touch on it briefly. Okay, my family's from Haiti. I grew up in New York City, Queens, right? I grew up around a lot of Jamaicans, a lot of Puerto Ricans. When I moved to Jersey, a lot of Haitians. And when I moved to Jersey, I grew up in an all-white neighborhood around a lot of Italians, okay? Very prominent, very, wealthy, owning their own businesses, small community near Alpine. Lived in 7 different countries, exposed to different things. So I'm well-rounded in that I can see someone from the Midwest and talk about guns, talk about outdoor, activities. I can see someone from Queens break out my Air Jordan collection, right, and all my fitted caps. Talk to someone in the music industry, right, break out my vinyl collection and discuss new and current hip hop. When you want to talk about politics, when I working in DC, discuss, different issues regarding policies and so forth and so on. So what I'm saying to you is that there's a level of authenticity there where it's like you can relate to everyone. But within the MBTI community, you have a lot of intellects, or those who are non-urbanized. You see what I'm saying to you? Not from the hood, not from the ghetto. Okay, those who have a little bit of education, more white, Asian, and other ethnicities who aren't so urbanized. Okay, you don't have a lot of urban. There's not an urban MBTI section. Okay, so these people don't relate. So when they want to understand themselves, or even just people from, like, let's say, low income housing, they're not understanding about the this and that, and about the TE and FE and how it relates to the tertiary and all this kind of crazy stuff. You see what I'm saying to you? But yet that's what we do. That's all we sit here and do. And then someone who's now into understanding people, and you would think, okay, well, yeah, we need to start providing more qualitative content that deals with real world. And how do you deal? So, like, I'm an INFJ, so how do I deal with the ENTP on the outside, right? How do I deal with leadership? How do I deal with enforcing regulations, giving actual directions to people, right? Being competent, right? Giving real world advice in real world settings. So, for example, I'm working here and I was tasked to do this, okay, but I'm not really great at giving orders, so forth. So how have I overcome this inability to actually take charge and be a little bit more vocal and more assertive. You see what I'm saying to you? And there's also there's the difference between having more masculine traits versus feminine traits. I have feminine traits as well. When I'm dancing, when I'm doing that, I express my femininity. Okay, so cannot go there because I know some people are going to try to whatever. But there's a lot of there's a lack of masculinity when it comes to providing that sort of that content, because certain people are INFJs who are at war, who are providing first line defense, right? Who may need some of that more structured masculine advice versus someone who may be a male as well, who's in production, right? And may need a softer side, that feminine side, right, of him to come out and be able to take that approach as well in the creative world, right? But it's all real world advice, all real world activities, right? But also relating that. You know what I'm saying to you? Because you can't go to a YouTuber, to let's say you're into hip hop. You know he's an artist. He's gonna discuss artists, but you know behind him he's an artist, and he's gonna provide social currents, this, that, and the third, and give, you know. But for us, it's like we're in this little bubble. Very few people understand it, but within that, you have people like me who, yes, I am experienced, I am overdeveloped, okay? But because I've been stimulated by so many different exposures in my life and experiences, but I want to come also to a community where I can find someone who is much more greater, or who has much more experience and who can see things at my level. But I find myself having to go to the ENFJs, not the INFJs, because the INFJs are horrible at giving advice. And I think that needs to change. On that note, I'll end it. Johnny Fontana, Real World INFJ. Again, I don't keep track of this. This is just for information. If you want to contact me directly, info@boothridertv.com. I'll leave the link below. But other than that, hey, we need to track on, because okay, there's certain things that we need to be picking up on, and as such, we need to not be articulating that in our videos. All right, we out.